Hey, all right.
All right, welcome
Hey,
everybody. I hope we have some people joining us over the next minute or two. Today we're going to talk about how to retain today's workforce, and specifically we're talking about leaders, but I could see anybody who, even if you're not in a leadership position right now, being getting value out of a conversation about retention in the workplace. We've got Dana Williams and H. Muir. How do you say it's Muir, right? Or
It's
Muir?
Muir. It
Muir.
rhymes with pure or sure.
Muir. Muir. H. Muir and
I like
Micah
that.
Lorenc. H, you have to get that all the time, don't you?
Well, and then
I do.
Homer and
Well, the only places in the country where people pronounce it correctly are Wisconsin and California because of John Muir, that discovered Yosemite, and
Oh,
there's all
yeah.
kinds of stuff named after him. He grew up in Wisconsin and Madison, and then went
So
to
they grow
California.
up
So
saying that word. Nice.
yeah, but otherwise, yeah, it's butchered all the time.
Oh, I know. Dana will never understand what we go through when people try to say our last names. It's fine. It's
yeah,
fine,
I don't
Dana.
understand. Except my husband's first name's strange, so we get that. I get called
Okay,
Dana
you get it
Worth.
on that end.
His name is Worth, so I get called Dana Worth all the time instead of Dana
Oh,
Williams.
wow.
So yeah,
His first name is Worth?
uh-huh,
No
yeah,
way.
Worth
Very
yeah,
Williams.
cool.
yeah.
Wow.
How about that?
Worth Williams.
Yeah,
I
It's
like
it's
it.
oh it's super. It's like a superhero, right? Because a lot of them
well,
have.
he thinks he
Yeah.
is sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Some days he is.
Well, why don't we jump into the topic
Yeah.
today? We do want to encourage anybody who is listening to use the comments and add any thoughts or questions or impressions that you have as you're listening to us talk about this topic. We cannot respond to the comments ourselves through the chat, but we can respond verbally as we see your questions and comments come through. So if you're listening right now and you want to just say hello, go ahead and shoot us a hello. We love knowing that people
Yeah.
are joined and listening and thinking about comments and questions that may come up. I'm going to introduce myself real quick and then give Dana and H an opportunity to introduce themselves. And then we'll jump into the topic of how to retain today's workforce. My name is Micah Lorenc. I am an ICF certified coach and a Gallup certified strengths coach. And I spend a lot of my time right now working with startup founders and their leadership teams doing leadership development and team development workshops. Dana, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Dana Williams, and I am also a certified strengths coach. I spend a lot of my time helping coaches and leaders unlock their talents. And specifically right now, I'm working with a lot of companies to put together a whole roadmap for strengths. And so that's been exciting, and to work alongside their coaches as we build that. So over to you, H.
Thanks, Dana. I'm a facilitator. I work with brands and teams and leaders in developing their organizations or their business. I've been doing it about 10 years.
Hey.
And you both have kind of a brand that you call your own business, right?
Mine's Lift Shop. So give your team a lift, give your brand a lift, give your organization a lift. That's my elevator pitch. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
then I have just a kind of a brand saying that's dominate your day, and it's underneath the umbrella of Dana Williams Consulting. And then I created the Strengths Journal. Right. So we are all about helping everybody live in their strengths every day.
Dana, I can't believe now that I know your husband's name that your company wasn't called Make Your Day Worthy, something like that.
That'll be his company.
He would have loved that. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. He's got that name, so it follows him.
That's so good. All right. Well, let's jump into the topic for the day: how to retain today's workforce. I saw Mike said hello. That was good. He followed our encouragement. Good to see you, Mike. Thanks for joining us. So I actually want to take a page out of H's book. He always likes to start with a couple of data points. Let's start with some statistics that get our minds thinking about what this topic means for us in the workplace. And so I wanted to share a couple of statistics that I found really insightful that I doubt any of these will surprise any of you, but I'll use this as kind of a starting point for the conversation. I read that right now the turnover rate is 57.3%. And actually, I say right now, this data was collected at the end of July. So it's been a couple of months since it was collected, but by mid-year 2021, 57.3% is the turnover rate, or the average turnover rate for around employee retention, which is just crazy to think about. Over half of your workforce thinking about like being at risk of attrition or leaving the company is kind of a scary statistic. And when you think about, I read that 33% or it costs an employer an average of 33% of the employee's salary when they exit. So you're basically, if you're during a time of attrition, when people are coming and going, you're giving up a third of that expense of what you would have paid that person to stay on just to see them go and replace them with somebody new. So it's kind of sobering to think about as a business and as a business owner, what kind of impact that would have on my expenses as a business owner and being able to stay profitable. A couple other statistics that I found really interesting is that, and this is specifically around some things that struck me as areas where leaders can improve and retain their employees better. But they said that when an employee does not feel valued at work, 76% of them look for another job opportunity. So just that alone, feeling valued at work. And I think that might be defined differently by different people, but 76% just seems incredible to me. And then even more incredible is there was one workforce survey report that said 94% of surveyed employees responded that if a company invested in helping them learn, they would stay longer. So I don't know what longer looks like for everybody, but 94% of the people surveyed, that was enough. If you're helping me learn, if you're investing in me to develop new skill sets, I'll stay longer. So I think what that says is it's not enough to keep them forever, but they'll commit to a little bit longer. Sorry, Dana, I saw you.
Because using Clifton Strengths, we found that the majority of our people in marketing at the time had learner as one of their top 5. So I'm curious, and I know H is always the expert on where we are in the world with learner, but I'm curious about that because as you say that, it's so important to know that about your employees. Are they in the top? Is learner important to them, even though we know they want to learn? But I think that is an important stat as you think about learning and giving them opportunities. I know we went and got some online learning tools that they could use and get, some amazing, talent grow through that. And that seemed to suffice at the time. But I was curious.
I know learners in the top 10 for sure.
10.
Maybe top 5.
I think it's top 3. I think it
is. I think it is top 5. One of the statistics I saw that's really interesting.
Number 2.
Top 2? Wow.
Yeah. 18 to 24-year-olds view upskilling and development as a more important benefit than insurance, vacation, and retirement benefits. I thought that was like, whoa. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, they're probably not thinking about retirement, but a vacation and insurance, that was startling
really
to me.
Well, I don't think they compartmentalize the way that people used to compartmentalize work life and home life or personal life. They want that to feel like I don't need to go on vacation because I love my work and I like the people I work with. So I could see why that may not be as important. And Dana, to your point, I have low learner, and it's just like I curse the Strengths Finder gods for not giving me more. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just not a learner. And yet I am constantly seeking out, as a maximizer, I'm constantly seeking ways to be better. I want to maximize my own development. And I look for that too, even as a low learner. I want to maximize myself and develop myself. And I expected that from employers. So I think that covers knowing that learner is number 2, top most frequent to show up on someone's list. There are still other strengths that, for different reasons, care about development. And so that 94% statistic that I read, that even if you just give me opportunities to learn, I'll stay longer. That kind of makes more sense.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Cool.
And on the value piece, what are you finding from that? Because that can mean different things to different people, right? So
So the thing that stuck out to me about that, and actually I think it would be helpful, especially for anybody who's new to experiencing kind of our expertise and what we like to talk about, there are two resources that we refer to a lot. One of them is the Clifton Strengths themes. So if you're not familiar with Clifton Strengths or the Clifton Strengths assessment, you need to do some research. You're missing out on an incredibly valuable asset to your own personal and professional development. But the Clifton Strengths assessment and the 34 themes is something we refer to a ton. And then the other thing is the Gallup Q12, the engagement questions that are indicators of an environment where employees can be more engaged at work. And that, when I was thinking about that question, Dana, the employees feel valued, I immediately went to the Q12, the 12 engagement questions, and it struck me number 4, 5, 6, and 7 to me were indicators of when ways that you might feel valued. And so I'll read them real quick. Number 4 was, in the last 7 days, have you received recognition or praise for doing good work? Number 5 is, does your supervisor or someone at work seem to care about you as a person? 6 is there someone at work who encourages your development? And 7, at work, do your opinions seem to count? I felt like all 4 of those were big indicators of, am I valued in the workplace?
Yeah, I had similar experience, Micah. And I think this is a Gallup article, and to plug Gallup, which, by the way, is the source for the Clifton Strengths and the Q12. This was all about, so what can a manager or leader do to ensure people are valued, right? And essentially what they were saying was, understand the impact on your people. Where are they right now? Address it, and then advocate for employees. Advocate for employees, which to me felt a little bit like name it, claim it, aim it, which is something else that we talk about. But my two key takeaways from this, because by the way, Gallup is holding a webinar about this, about what managers can do. I think coming up soon. But my two key takeaways. One is a statistic: 86% of high potentials feel used up at the end of the day. So it's not just, so it's people are looking to leave, and then people who are your high potentials, if they're not looking to leave, they're not feeling valued, they're feeling used up. And so when you talk about addressing it, right, I thought 5 questions that this article talked about to ask that are, to me, a little more tactical, but a little more urgent than maybe the Q12 was. One is, the first question is, what do you look forward to each day? The second question is, what are you learning currently, and what do you want to learn? The third question, and this really starts to get into it, why are you staying? Right? I mean, are you having this conversation as a coach with your employees? Number 4, I love this one. When was the last time you thought about leaving, and why did you think about it? And then the fifth one, the 5th question was, what can I do to make your job better? I thought those were probably the most relevant questions that a manager can do right now, is really asking those. And again, I think those were from Gallup. I have to look at my source, but yeah, I like those a lot. That's a retention conversation.
That is a retention. And it's interesting that they ask, what was that one about how long have you thought about leaving? When was the last time you thought about
When was the last time you thought about leaving, and why?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think a lot of people would not share that.
Right.
Which also is telling.
Managers wouldn't be comfortable asking that, because they don't want to put that in your head. If I put in your head that you might be thinking about leaving and want to know why, that might be enough to send you out the door.
But I think those questions are really great. And I think to have that kind of relationship between a leader and a direct report, that they can say those kind of things. And they can, because you think about a good leader you've had, you could tell them that, man, I'm thinking about, but I don't know. And so yeah, it's the relationship.
Well, Dana, I'm, as you call me, the king of domains, and you know what my domains are, is RISE. You can't get to information and influence, which this is information. You're soliciting information,
right?
Until you do the R, you have the relationship first. You got to have the relationship and the trust before you can have that open, honest communication. So I think maybe that's the key too. It's like we could talk about how you build trust as a manager.
And maybe that's enough even for anybody who may be listening to this as a manager or a leader in that kind of situation, to ask yourself candidly and be vulnerable about this and think, would I be comfortable asking that question to my people? And if the answer is no, then we need to back up and ask, what do you need to do to build the kind of relationship that would enable you to be able to ask these two questions and have a candid conversation with your employees about them leaving and what that looks like?
Yeah, I think the other piece of what you were talking about, Micah, and also to get to that conversation is just that people are overworked. Is that, I think, the third area you mentioned? And is that overwhelmed? Is that burnout? We're hearing a lot about burnout right now. And so I think in that kind of conversation that you're talking about, H, those questions will come up. Are you burnt out? What's causing? Because we know that 76% of full-time employees right now are burned out. They're just at least. And so it's like, well, what's causing that? And a lot of it is around well-being. So how do you help your leader as a leader? How do you help your employees thrive with their career well-being? So they say one of the questions that you can ask that's probably, and I think this came from Gallup as well, H, another question is, do you like what you do each day? Just ask the question. They said it might be the most basic, but yet most important question you can ask for career well-being. And so then all kinds of things could come up. It might be stuff going on at family. It might not be the career, but it might be all these other things that come up with well-being.
You know what's interesting? I'm sorry, Dana, were you done?
No, yeah, I'm done.
I just was like, you just made me think about an experience. I never had this experience, but at my last company, I worked at an insurance company, and there were times when we would have catastrophe season, and a lot of the people on our CAT teams, our catastrophe teams, would be on call. Like, I remember a couple of hurricanes, a couple of floods, and some of the California fires, where we would hear the stories of these employees that would be on basically 24-hour work shifts on site in California with fires nearby, people evacuating. Most of it was after the fact, but people were experiencing incredible losses at these times. And these employees would go and just be there for our members for 2 weeks. And it was intense hours and intense emotional support. And they loved it. They thrived in those situations. And in the research I was just reading recently about retention, they made this distinction between short-term going above and beyond for the short term and giving extra to fill in for your team or to be there for your customers over the short term versus the long term. And I think that's a really important distinction right now when it comes to burnout and overworking, is that this isn't like let's go nail this for a week and everybody's going to work hard and it's going to feel really good because we're there for people when they're going through big trials and they just lost their house and it's burned to the ground and we're going to be there for them. We're talking about a different situation where, because the marketplace is so good for employees, they're leaving and finding other jobs. And sometimes when they're not even looking, they're getting recruited to go get a better job. And they're like, okay, I guess I'll go do that now. And what that's doing is it's leaving teams short-staffed. And so now 5 people are doing the work of 8 people and nothing changes. And managers aren't saying no to work for their employees. They're just saying, okay, well, I guess you guys have to cover for the 3 people who have just left. And now there's no end in sight when that happens. We're expecting people to fill in and take on 100% of the capacity with 80 or 70% of the people. And that's I think where burnout and overworking is really affecting people and driving even more attrition because they can't sustain that. It's an interesting cycle that I think is looping back into itself, that people are leaving because they're overworked, which leaves more of their previous team overworked, and then the risk of leaving. It's an interesting cycle that I don't think we've experienced in the workplace for a long time.
I think it's a big shift in, I do think, we've heard it called the Great Resignation, the Great Discontent, the Revolution. I think what you said, what exacerbates this retention and what makes it so hard is there's so many job options available. And these stressors continue, right? The pandemic is kind of still continuing. I'm having to work from home and juggle all my roles. All of those things are continuing. We're not out of it yet. And so how do I retain? And I think we've talked about what managers can do. I think the other thing that I would say is, as organizational leaders, one of the things I'm talking to my clients about and what they're saying is, how do I change my culture? And how do I have a culture that is employee centric, puts employees first, that it's not about shareholders, it's about stakeholders. I mean, there was some big conference that I saw where, and this was right before the pandemic. I think it was 200 companies signed this about, it's not just the profit, planet, people, it's also purpose. And the purpose, you have to be more than just about making money. And that's about stakeholder engagement. And so I think it's really hard for companies to go, how do I turn my culture? Because they've got to. And I think it starts, number one, with leadership. And that's something I think we're going to talk about going forward. But I think it starts with leadership of, do you have empathy for your employees? And you asking these questions, right? To understand their situation. Are you enabling them? What we've just talked about. Are we developing them? Are we empowering them, right? That we let them choose where they get to work from and what their jobs are. And then are we encouraging them? I think the other thing that we haven't talked about for retention is just appreciation and recognition. So those are kind of the 4 E's when I talk about culture, those are things as a leader that you've got to look to do. And I think it's never more relevant than when you're retaining.
And I don't think you should wait for your company to do that. If you're in a big company, I think you own that space
100%.
around you to develop that community and to develop that place where people feel safe and they feel like they have the social well-being, the career well-being. They're thriving because people care about them. They know about their family. They know everything of, they're bringing their whole self to work. And I think when leaders wait for their company to do it, it's not going to happen. It's gotta happen at that leadership level, because we know people, leave their leaders. They don't leave their companies. So I would say if you're a leader out there and you're having some retention problems, think about what you can do with the Q12. Think about what you can do with the career well-being questions. Think about what you can do to know and to build those relationships with your employees in a different way. Because in a hybrid environment, it's a little bit challenging sometimes if you're not seeing them and being with them all the time. But there's ways that we've all gotten around that. But I think it's really up to that manager. And I think the other thing too, we've been hearing is that there's a lot of new managers out there. So they're watching the people ahead of them. And some of those people aren't the best role models. And some of them, right? In some cases. So just be the entrepreneur inside the business and make that happen, and make your area be the one that everybody wants to work for. You be the leader that people don't want to leave. And that's the focus. That should be the focus, because it's harder in some. Ooh, it looks like we got something from
Mike. And by the way, hey, Mike, it's nice to see you.
Yeah.
I was actually just about to say, we're going to wrap up in about 5 minutes. So if anybody has any thoughts, comments, or questions, please share.
Yeah. It looks like
while you read that, I was just going to add one thought to what Dana just said, in that I read something that talked about how some managers are trying to do that. They're trying to be more engaged in how they retain their people. But what's hard is there's this disconnect between the corporate leadership at the highest levels of leadership are saying they want that kind of culture that retains their employees, but then they don't empower their managers or their leaders to make those changes. So they won't put their money where their mouth is. They won't sacrifice a little bit of business in order to improve employee well-being, or to create development opportunities and a budget for development opportunities, or more time off when needed, or leave situations, paternity leave and things like that. So it's interesting that there is some not walking their talk. They say they want the culture, but they're not putting their money where their mouth.
Well, and I'm gonna a nod to Mike here, because I I've known Mike for a long time. We're baby boomers. And I know, Mike, that's the thing. We, suck it up. That was kind of the mantra as we were growing up in the corporate world. And I'm sure the CEO you're talking about was probably also a baby boomer, maybe a Gen Xer, but more than likely a baby boomer. And I think what's happening is baby boomer leadership over the last 60 some years has been predominantly control and command. And what you're seeing now with millennials and centennials, they won't put up with that. They've got enough confidence to go. And by the way, with the economy and the pandemic, they've got enough confidence and they've thought it through enough to go, I'm not going to put up with being overworked, undervalued, not developed, and not living the life I want. And they're walking with their feet. And so I think it's interesting. We're at a very unique time in terms of leadership and culture. And I think there's, with that, don't know what the solutions are. There's lots of opportunity though.
Yeah, and I think there's not one answer. It's just everything is so unique, right, to each individual organization, each group, but each person is unique. So understanding their strengths is number one, and understanding where they are, what their current state is, what they need, and then coming up with where they want to be, and then identifying where the gaps are, helping them create, what are the gaps right now? And this might be another way to say, what are you not getting at work right now? Or what are you thinking about? Where are you thinking about? Why are you thinking about leaving? And then creating an actions plan together with the leader to help that employee get what they need from work. And in Mike's situation, I think no one was really listening to him until he was ready to go.
Until he left.
Yeah. And then, that's a big story. I think right now we're hearing too. Well, I was going to leave, but they gave me what I wanted, and it shouldn't get to that, right? So
I've heard a crazy number of Mikes out there where they did leave, and then they find out 2 or 3 people were hired to replace them, and they're like, "I was telling you that all along, and now you do it after I leave." And it's like it's almost validating in a little bit, because I was doing the work of 2 or 3 people, and I knew it. But why didn't they make the changes while I was still there? And that's the hard part.
I think it goes back to and that's the opportunity, right? When you don't know what to do, you do what you know. And I think that leaders are just sticking to, what got, and Maxwell said, what got you here won't get you there, right? I don't think, and I think that this is a huge opportunity for leaders to say, I've got to change the way I lead. And I think that's something we're going to be talking about in the coming weeks of how do you develop leaders, and what does leadership development look like, as we head into 2022.
Yeah. Agreed. The leader that you are now is not the leader you're going to need to be 6 months from now. We know that it's constantly evolving. So I love this focus that we're going to have on leadership over the next couple of weeks. So
yeah. Well, and that's a great segue, as we're kind of coming up on time here, that we hope to spend, for anybody who's just joining us for the first time, we like to do a LinkedIn Live every 2 weeks. So in 2 more weeks, we will try another one of these. We've actually been experimenting a little bit with the time of day just to see what works best for people. So I can't guarantee or promise that it'll be at the same time or the same day, but in another 2 weeks, we'll meet again, and we'll do that through the end of the year. At least we want to talk about leadership as a topic, and leadership development specifically, and hope more of you can join us for our future conversations. I think, Dana, we were going to try to put some resources that we've talked about and make them available.
So 3 things. Please let us know if this time is a good time for you, or if you'd rather have noon. That was another option we were thinking about. We were also on Mondays later in the afternoon, I think at 1:00 Central Time. All these times are Central. And number 2, let us know what areas of leadership you're interested in. I think there's so many areas we can go, and we're kind of just, by us working in the marketplace, are working on the things that we're hearing. And then number 3, we're going to try to put all these resources in we will be putting all these in dominateyourday.club. And please just know that that's where all our resources are. You can go there now and get a ton of cool stuff and books and resources. So that will be our resource place. And we are so excited that you're with us today. Micah, thank you for leading us today.
Oh, no problem.
Great.
And hi, Simone. Simone just said hi.
Hi, Simone.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, from Toronto. Thank you, Simone.
Yeah, nice.
Yes, we will hear back. So let us know your questions. Let us know your needs as we continue on this conversation. So thank you.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.
Yeah, thanks. Okay.